This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. And 10 years ago today, a book called KENOBI finally made it into the world. And to celebrate this tremendous anniversary, I'm joined on the show today by none other than John Jackson Miller. I hope you enjoy our conversation. How are you? Things are going well?
Oh yeah. It's I have a very brief window between now and Dragon Con, so it's gonna get complicated at that point. So
yeah. Oh, tis the season for all the cons, and
I have events in 5 different buildings in one day. It's like my freshman year of college.
Oh, that's like a nightmare I have regularly, where I'm trying to run across campus.
No, I had a stress dream for a convention appearance last night that I have not had before, and well, it was a doozy. It was I was going to be sharing a booth with somebody else, so naturally I decided I was going to manufacture a banner with both our books on it, and then FedEx was delivering the banner, but they wouldn't come into the building, and I had to go out, and then I couldn't get back in, and and then I realized I can't use this banner ever again because the person that I'm signing with is not going to be anyway. And they ended up being late anyway, so it's okay.
Well, I mean, let's hope that Dragon Con goes well and there's as little stress as possible. There's always something, it seems like.
More or less.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, well, the thing is, and the reason that you're here today is that you've written some Star Wars books, some Star Wars comics, things like that. And you have one book in particular that has been around so long that I have not one, not two, but 3 versions of the same book, not including ebooks, not including audiobooks. KENOBI is the book that we're talking about.
I think today. I'm up to like 15 versions over here, but I haven't counted exactly.
Amazing. Do you have, I don't know if you can answer this question. You don't have to if you don't want to, but do you have a favorite cover?
It's I think the one that they selected was spectacular. It was not the only one that they chose. Or that they had to choose from. The other one by the same artist ended up being the cover to the Brazilian edition, and that one was really cool. Of course, we have the new version, and of course that's not the Essential Legends American version. This is the Essential Legends Italian version. So this guy actually does this thing here, where it folds out, and the Brazilian version is like that too, where it's got additional art. That one actually has additional art on it. But and of course the one that everybody thinks is the original cover is not, and that is this guy here.
Oh, I love that
and
one.
Yeah, and what that was, I think it's Chris Scalf, I believe, and what that was when we were announcing the book at New York Comic-Con, I hadn't even really started to write it yet. I mean, I had the plot already approved, and I was about to start writing it, or I may have just started. But they needed something, and so they went to Dark Horse, and Dark Horse already had that piece that they had commissioned for something else. And Dark Horse said, yeah, go ahead and give it. And of course, I found out about this kind of backwards because when when the novel was announced, as a courtesy, I called Randy Stradley, and we're actually skipping way ahead in this story, but this actually is a segue into it, because the Kenobi novel was originally going to be a graphic novel for Dark Horse, and this goes back to me and Jeremy Barlow, who was the assistant editor working for Randy when I was doing Knights of the Old Republic, and he had wanted to do a graphic novel for Star Wars, an original graphic novel that would come out in 2007 to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Star Wars and the 20th anniversary of Dark Horse. And he had sort of put to me the notion of, can you come up with something? And I was at that point about 6 months away from quitting my day job. I had been editing magazines and books about comics and various other things, games, for about 13 years, and had been promoted to the point where my job was no fun anymore.
No.
And I was rage packing my trunk of my car every day just to feel better. All the stuff that I'd accumulated over the years. And this was a period where there was a stretch where for a good 2 months or so, the people in the main office forgot that I worked for them. And it's like, in all these organizational things, and it's like, I'm going on a salary here. I've got my own office. I don't have any direct reports working for me, and I'm not working for anybody. And so, during this period, I'm writing issues of Knights of the Old Republic in the office, and basically trying to line up additional work as I can. And so when Jeremy said, "Hey, you got any ideas?" It's like, okay, yeah, sure. And so we go back and forth on just the notion, because we had been talking about Westerns that we loved, and we talked about maybe we'll do something with Boba Fett. Maybe we'll do an homage to the movie Shane, where Shane is the movie from the 50s based on the novel about the mysterious stranger who wanders into town, who a gunfighter with a past, befriends the local ranchers and ends up in the middle of a range war, fighting Jack Palance. And so we had gone back and forth on this, and I'd come up with a couple of ways to do it with Boba Fett. But then I also had come up with an idea. I'd forgotten to mention this. The other one I talked about doing. I think I've never mentioned this before. I was thinking about doing The Mandalorian Art of War as written by Cassis Fett. And this is Cassis Fett. At the time, I had basically, in the Knights of the Old Republic comics, I had more or less turned into this sort of ultimate Mandalorian. I think this was before my friend Keith DeCandido did the Klingon Art of War book over for Gallery Press, or not. Either way, I don't think I knew about it yet. But I had this notion that, hey, I'll do something where it's a Mandalorian book. And yeah, either way, we didn't go any further with that one either. But what happened is I can't remember what made me do it, but I said, you know what if I were to do that Western story with Obi-Wan Kenobi? And I sent him an email with the title, literally, the Ben Kenobi Western. And I posted this pitch, which is not really a pitch, it's just a message. I posted this on Twitter before, where in the course of about 8 paragraphs is essentially the book. It's more or less what ends up being in the novel. And he sends me back a response. Now we're talking. and basically, in between me doing everything else, which is not my job, I spend the next couple of months wedging into everything else that I'm doing at the time, because this is also when we're starting to do Vector for Star Wars, the comics line. All this stuff is going on, and I'm pounding away on this plot for Kenobi. And again, the first version of it it is different from the novel, and in a couple of senses, and this is all up on my website on farawaypress.com on the Kenobi page. But I in this version, Annalene was Oren's daughter, and not his co-worker or friend, or his best friend's widow. At that point, she was a girl named Hardy Pritchell, and and the idea was basically the same, except that he would discover that her dad is doing all these bad things. But I realized after that first draft, I think, that I didn't like sort of the dynamic between her and Obi-Wan, because it put her in the position of being sort of in this hero worship position, and it ends up not being something that can have a romantic undercurrent, which of course we later get in the novel itself. Now I do eventually get to do that story, because in the novel that came out this year, Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The High Country, it is also a Western, or as my editor says, it's a science fiction novel with horses in it. But what happens is Captain Pike becomes trapped on a planet where technology doesn't work, and he is found by a teenage girl who she and her father take him in, and the hero worship thing is going there, more or less as it might have gone in the Kenobi book, where she's certain that he has a secret. She's certain that this guy, where did he come from? What did he do? He's got to have had a secret. But again, that gets abandoned in the second draft, and the second draft, I think, is also when a Yark starts to take shape more. And I think that's where a lot more of the Jabba stuff comes in, and we still go back around for a third draft, and by the third draft it's 50 pages long, and by the third draft it's 50 pages long. I've quit the day job. I've got the assignments that allow me to quit the day job, but I also have the fact that, well, Knights of the Old Republic is going, but I'm also supposed to be kicking off Vector. There was, for a while we were talking about doing a Coder miniseries that would have starred Griff, and that ended up, the name of it ended up going to the Star Wars novel Scoundrels. More or less from we didn't do the comic series, but I gave the title to my editor at Random House, and she said, yeah, we gave it to this novel over here, which is fine.
Yeah.
Somebody would have used it eventually.
Yeah.
But and instead of doing that, I ended up doing the a Knights of the Old Republic handbook, the handbook that appeared as part of the series. So I have all this stuff going on here, and I get to Star Wars Celebration in Los Angeles in 2007, and I go to dinner with Jeremy, and he says, well, I've got some news for you. I'm leaving the Star Wars office, but I'm going to take you with me because I've just gotten Indiana Jones, and there's going to be a new Indiana Jones movie. And our conversation previous to this was, if there would ever be an Indiana Jones 4, I wanted to write the comic book, and so that's what we did. And so between all of that, and then also at that event, I picked up the campaign guide for the role-playing game for Coder. So I had all this stuff going on, and he said, we're just gonna have to park the Kenobi book, which at the time was called Ben. And the other reason that we parked it was that at that time there was a rumor that Lucas would be doing a ABC to maybe explore the dark times, the period in between episode 3 and 4, in some sort of a TV show. And of course, nobody could imagine Star Wars as a live action TV show at that point. But already in this process, I had to alter in between drafts to deal with the fact that we had we had a Shared Het showing up in Legacy, and so I needed to actually deal with him in that plot. So anyway, I had all this stuff done, and I just said, okay, I'll park it, and it sits in a folder for years. It does not come up again until I think it's 2010, when I had just finished writing the Knight Errant novel, and the comic series for that is still ongoing at that point. I go to Star Wars Celebration in Orlando and am discussing with the editor Shelley Shapiro possible next novels, and I mentioned the idea of basically Star Wars meets Bonanza and this Obi-Wan Kenobi novel, and she's interested, but we don't do anything with it. And in the meantime, I'm doing other things. I end up, 2012 gets extremely busy because I've got 3 different comic series coming out from Dark Horse. And what ends up happening is I really kind of run out of work at Dark Horse, because I had done those 3 series, because I had a Coder miniseries, a Knights of the Old Republic miniseries, and a Lost Tribe of the Sith, Knight Errant, Coder, and Lost Tribe of the Sith, all in the same year. So 15 comics. And other things that we had talked about doing had either fallen through or not materialized or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, this could be it for a while. But I had the Lost Tribe of the Sith collected edition coming out for Star Wars, and I went to Star Wars Celebration with 2 ideas. One was this Odyssey that would involve, basically I was going to do Vector, except in my own sort of universe, where it would be not universe, but a Vector that would tie together in prose Knights of the Old Republic, Lost Tribe of the Sith, and Knight Errant. And it could have been short stories, it could have been something different, it could have been a novel, but it would have been extremely continuity heavy. I have the proposal for it, and it's thick with references to things. And if you didn't read any one of those 3 books, you might be lost. And so I present that idea, and also and where this meeting is taking place, it's Shelley and Frank Parisi and I are on the floor at Star Wars Celebration in the hallway, because there is no furniture in the Orlando Convention Center. This is 2012. The first idea kind of lands with a thud, and I say, well, there's Ben, and again, Ben was what we were calling it at the time, and Ben, I had called it all the way up to when we actually get it more or less approved, and they say, there's already a Ben Skywalker, let's call it Kenobi. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's fine by me. But that's how that happened. And but what happened was, they had said at that time that we're starting to now look at doing, Lucasfilm is interested in us doing more stories focusing on characters from the original movies. And if you look around the 2013 time, you do have 3 novels in 2013, 2014 that come out, because there's a Leia solo novel not Leia Solo, but there's a solo Leia novel. There's a solo Han Solo novel. And then there's a Luke Skywalker novel that does not come out until on the other side of the Legends changeover. But basically that was what those were. And Kenobi is not the fourth of these necessarily, because it was not conceived to be this, because it had already existed. But yeah, we get that that gets approved after I send in one chapter. Jennifer Heddle had wanted to see one chapter at Lucasfilm, a sample of what I intended to do. And so what I did is I wrote the chapter where Annalene is in the general store and just, you could see how boring her day is. She takes off to go help Obi-Wan Kenobi, where he's trying to set up house. And I write this entire, chapter that appears in the book is almost exactly that test chapter. And she approved it, and then we made some changes to the previous concept. It was Jen's idea that we not just have one monologue or one meditation, but we have several of them, and that was fine by me, because that's the only voice that he has, because he's not a point of view character in the story. Right. But basically, I had always kind of known this might work better in prose anyway, because it is told from the points of view of all these other people. But there's no way I could have written that story in 2006 or 2007, because the most I had done was a short story here or there. And so that happens. And yes, as that book is announced, I called Randy and I said, just letting you know they're doing a novel based on this concept I had while I was over at Dark Horse. He says, yes, I know, because we gave them the art. So, although that art was not supposed to be for my story, but for about a year and even longer, people have said, well, why was this not the cover of the book? And it's very simple. It's horizontal. Yeah. It was never intended to be a novel cover. If you wrap it around, the piece of art is not tall enough to actually be a novel cover. Right. So it's a great piece. But what they ended up using is they used it as the poster that we gave away as a promotional at San Diego in 2013, as well as the screaming crate dragon calls. These were keychains that they made that had the scream of the crate dragon. And Leland Shee, the keeper of the holocron, went back and found the actual audio file of the crate dragon call from the movie, the original movie, and made sure we used that. And so, we had all of these things that we were giving out at the thing, and I ended up coming back from San Diego with a sack full of these things, screaming constantly. And I was just like, I know this is going to get stopped by the TSA or whatever. But that is the very, very, very long answer to your question, which started with a digression, but it took us probably back through some of the main points.
This book has such an amazing story. And, it happens a lot where, behind the scenes, things are happening and fans don't know that. Fans can't know that. And, things are talked about and then they're put aside and then maybe they're brought back and sometimes they're not. So when after all this time, after almost 7 years of, this thing may have been started and then it, you've all put it aside for a while, finally having that announced and finally being able to it's out in the world, people know what's happening. How did that feel?
I was not at New York Comic Con that year. I don't remember what had happened. I had gone a few times, but I was not there that year. Probably I'm just as happy that I wasn't, because it was quite a well, it was sort of like when Knights of the Old Republic, the comic series, was announced at San Diego. I wasn't there either, because it's like, who's this guy getting to do this? I do know that I had colleagues who said that was what I wanted to write, and I was like, okay, sorry. I had my chips down on this number 6 years ago. but no, it was the case that yeah, I did realize that this might be the only such story there was going to be, where this is I'm writing his first month on the planet, and I'm struggling with the fact that what I'm doing constantly, I'm questioning, yeah, are the kids ready for this? By kids, I mean everybody who reads these books. I mean young and old, because this was not your standard Star Wars story. I think the of the relatively, thankfully, small percentage of people that don't like the book, their main deal is, it wasn't a traditional, he Sith Lord comes to try to get baby Luke. It wasn't the stuff that it was in the TV show.
Yeah.
It wasn't the stuff that you would think would be the commercial way to do this sort of thing. This is a mood piece. This is about a guy. It's a psychological piece. It's about a guy who's in pain, basically being the catalyst for this we actually have we have it's actually both Annalene and a Yark changing their lives, and realizing that their vision of what had been has to completely change, and who they are have to completely change. Annalene is basically running on automatic. I read her as she's a widowed single mom who is running her husband's business, and it was never her dream. It was never what she wanted to do, but because of who she is the glue that is holding this entire little society together on this oasis. And she has this person who is left over from her husband's life as well, in Oren Galt, who is, I wanted the reader to not realize what he was until we got a good ways into it. And when they did, they had to want bad things for him, and then I gave him very bad things. But again, and again with a Yark, I mean, it was not supposed to be a Yark's destiny to be in charge, but here it is. So it's and so it's one of those things where it wasn't commercial. It wasn't no lightsaber fights, no space battles. A major change that happened at the last minute, or not the last minute, but the major change that happened, the two major changes that happened when the book came back from the editorial team, was basically, I think more or less the marketing department was looking at it and saying it would really, really help us if Obi-Wan Kenobi appeared before page 60. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I was worried about that the whole time, but I was kind of like in the middle of my mood piece here. And, Luke Skywalker, nothing really happens in the first 30 minutes of Star Wars to Luke Skywalker. I mean, it's I'm establishing the mood. I'm establishing what it's like to live here. But at the time, it was one of those things where, that piece of advice freaked me out horribly for about an hour. And then I remembered, I was going to write a short story for Star Wars Insider that was going to have him bringing the baby to the bar in Anchorhead and looking for directions. And I'm like, fine, I'll move that there. And all that required me to do was to create another, or not create, but to use another point of view character I had not used before. And I had the old Grouch character that I had created already. And I'm like, okay, that's great. So I wrote that, and I ended up doing another prequel story that did run in the magazine, and that really is more of an ancillary tale. But yeah, so there was that, and then they were also like, can we have a crate dragon at the end? And again, I was just like, okay, yeah, because they're using this silly call over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, and the thing that was going to tip Oren off to Obi-Wan being a Jedi was, the rocks fall, and he saves the kid by the Tusken kid by stopping the rock fall with the Jedi thing. And it's like, wait a minute, okay, all of these Tusken calls have finally attracted a giant, krayt dragon. He fights the krayt dragon. Oren sees that he's a Jedi. I guess spoilers before for any of this. But I think I knocked both of those scenes out in like 2 days, and that was it. And that was the only thing we really needed to do at that point. I think we just did a little bit of massaging of some of his interactions with Annalene to make it, it's that we're on a tightrope here, because he's definitely interested in reestablishing himself in this place, and he wants to avoid society. He wants to avoid detection, but he's also lost everybody, and he's lost everything. And she's seeing all that and responding to it, but again, she doesn't quite know what is it that he went through, because obviously we can't say. And so we have this moment out there by the fence where she just basically confronts him and says, whatever this thing is, you carried it home with you, you carried it here, and she visualizes all the possible things that she thinks he could have been involved with, that have caused him to run away, and obviously doesn't get anywhere near the truth. But yeah, but she decides, it doesn't matter what it was. It doesn't matter what it was. He's a mess, and he's a mess, and she just needs to say to him what she does say, which is, I'm here, and I expect to be here for many, many years. And so I think she thinks that she's got time to find out all of his secrets, and he realizes he just cannot let this go on, because it will be as he says it when he's trying to talk to Qui-Gon, when Qui-Gon is ghosting him, haha. He's like, this is, I think there's even a line, this is starting to become a problem. And so at any rate, it was a very different novel, and the things that we did on the editorial side, and on the licensing side, I think we did everything we could to get this thing in a position and in a place where it could be a success. And I think it ended up being artistically a success as well as a financial one. I remember my editor, this is the night that at San Diego, where we found out that the book had won the Scribe Award, which was one of the ones back there. I think her adjective for it was that it was a beautiful novel. And again, that's not a phrase you associate necessarily with science fiction novels, but I mean, it is this was not the Bridges of Tatooine County that I was writing here, where it was a serious, intended to be a ponderous, a reflection on this man and his relationships as he goes along, the people that he meets. But I do think that there's nothing I would change from it. I might, and I remember thinking that at the time, that there wasn't a word I would change. I might, going back now, I might have tweaked a lot of that stuff having to do with Asharid Het and the Tuscans. A lot of that was left over from when we were doing the comic series was already out there, and we already had this notion that there already had been this Jedi who had joined the Tusken Raiders, and that's Asharid Het, that's Asharid's father. And I felt like I needed to recognize that. I felt like I needed to actually respond to that. I think now, as time has gone on, and that story is not even as fresh in people's minds as it was then. I don't know exactly how much I would refer to anything like that that's outside of the world of episode 3, episode 4. But you never know.
The first time I read this book, those references made me want to go read the things that I had not read yet. So there's that aspect to it, where if someone hasn't, they don't know what the source material is, they can go then and find it. And I think that's one beautiful thing about Star Wars books, Star Wars comics, is like, if you don't know exactly what that reference is, go find it. It's out there.
Well, there was a stretch where you couldn't get those books.
Yeah.
And that was kind of when I was feeling that way. Is that there was a stretch where Marvel hadn't reprinted those issues. And so it's kind of like for years I've been dealing with the fact that the Knight Errant novel has been sending people to the non-existent Knight Errant comics. Because in the middle of the novel, it's got go get the comics from Dark Horse. And only this March did Marvel reprint all the Knight Errant comics. And so now I'm able to say, hey, you can get both parts of the story at once.
There you go.
But no, I mean, that is one of those things where this sort of thing is a moving target, where the things that you're trying to respond to and reflect are not necessarily even available. And so that's why I kind of am always going, do I really need to have this reference, this reference, this reference, this reference?
It's hard to have something that's finished and you look back on it and you're like, could I have done that differently? Maybe. But I can't change it now. It's hard because you always want to keep, I always want to keep like messing with the things that are already done. And I'm like, put it over there. It's over.
I was so happy it was done. Well, that was only my second novel. Because I'd done Knight Errant, and this one was it was a winter novel, and so I was feeling the isolation here in Wisconsin the same way that you would have felt it. I would think in the desert, and certainly my beard was going Obi-Wan lengths. But I would say I don't know what I doing another draft of the book. I'm not sure what I would change now. I think it's for a good while I was thinking, okay, that's my best novel and I would never top it. And now I've had a bunch of Star Trek books here in the last several years, and basically any one of the last three that all won Scribe Awards as well in consecutive years. The Die Standing novel with the Mirror Universe Emperor, Michelle Yeoh's character, the Rogue Elements novel with Captain Rios from the Picard series, and then High Country just now with which is the Strange New Worlds novel. I think they're all, at least in my mind, I put them all at least together on that tier, having nothing to do with awards or anything else. But in terms of, these are books that really, the things that I was trying to do with them are pretty high difficulty level things. And they're completely different books. One's we have a Western over here in KENOBI. We have Die Standing is a spy novel. Rogue Elements is a caper novel or a mystery. As I say, High Country is really a science fiction novel, even though it's got the horses. But I kind of have this feeling that what unites them are isolation. What unites them is a feeling of loss, and particularly and it's not just the two Trek books, Rogue Elements and Die Standing, that have that, but also New Dawn has that, because in both the cases of Obi-Wan in KENOBI, the KENOBI novel, and with Kanan in A New Dawn, they've lost everything and they don't have a roadmap for what is coming for them. They don't know what they're supposed to do. And that is absolutely the case in those two Trek novels, because in Rogue Elements, we have Captain Rios, who has been thrown out of Starfleet for reasons he does not understand. And like Kanan, he's drinking his way across the cosmos. I've referred to Die Standing as sort of the inverse or bizarro world version of KENOBI, because again, it's what if it was the Emperor that had to go into exile? Well, that's what happens in Die Standing. It's the evil Emperor from the Mirror Universe who loses the entire universe and has to live in our universe and decide, how do you go on? Do you try to reconstruct who you were based on the person you had been? I suppose Obi-Wan Kenobi could have basically set up his own junior Jedi Knights in the desert. But no, he realizes that there's that's not what his life is about right now, and that it's time for him to break and move on to his new responsibility, which is basically just sitting there and waiting for Luke Skywalker to grow up.
Kenobi has, it was published in 2013, so we are celebrating now the 10-year anniversary of this book finally being in the world. And I mean, since the book was published, you published another Star Wars book, and then plenty of other books and comics after that. And Kenobi has had almost like a renaissance of sorts since then, because even if the Kenobi show that aired on Disney Plus is not, based on this book, you had creators, you had people involved with the show revisiting the book to kind of get a feel for, what place might Obi-Wan be in his mind at this point in the show, which is so cool to have your book kind of like be that foundation for these future stories that are coming out. Of course, then once again, when this book was republished as part of the Essential Legends collection, and I know when I was revisiting this book again to get ready for this episode, it was the first time I listened to the audiobook, which has been around for a long time. But because sometimes when you go revisit books, you want to do it in a different format. So I'm like, I'll listen to the audiobook this time, and it's fantastic. There's so many ways to keep experiencing this book, and it just keeps coming back around. And I really hope that that continues, and that more.
Jonathan Davis is the audiobook reader, and again, just a wonderful performance he does. In 2022, the Essential Legends version came out before the TV show by about a month. But that wasn't the only reprint that they did last year, because they also did Tales of Kenobi, and this is the Barnes and Noble special edition that has my novel and The Approaching Storm by Alan Dean Foster. and it's got these wonderful gilt pages, shiny, and people can get them off my eBay store page, Faraway Press, but also at their local Barnes and Noble. But mine would be signed. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and this is actually, the interior is actually a replica of the original hardcover, which is now fairly hard to get. So it's I do not see them in the wild anymore. The book is in many different languages. It's in many different formats. And I've been able to follow on a couple of things into it. A Yark shows up again from a certain point of view, the Star Wars one, and then we also have. Well, I'm really happy about this. The Jabba's accountant, Mosep Benid, who actually starts way back in the second issue of the comic series. He ends up appearing in my story in the Canto Bight collection that we did, and I just sort of like the notion of, if whatever happened to Jabba the Hutt, he survived it, and he would still be doing his thing. And I was not asked to do anything with the third version of the certain point of view, which is probably just as well, because my idea would have been I would have had the accountant walking around basically checking off everything that Jabba was spending too much money on, and it would have been hard to survive that, I think.
So it turns out I lied to you at the beginning of this. I do also have that Barnes and Noble edition of the book.
Oh, there you go.
Back there. Didn't bring it up here, but so I've went four versions. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's I don't really I know I don't have them all. But it's okay. It's I'm just surprised that there are people that haven't seen it yet. Always, because again, it is by far, I think, well, maybe not by far, because there's a lot of New Dawns out there as well, because New Dawn is also out there in the Rise of the Empire collection. But yeah, it sort of is a towering kind of a thing in my personal bibliography.
It has been so great being able to talk to you and hear all your thoughts and reflections on this novel that so many people love, and that I hope from us talking about it, from anything, that more people discover. It's never too late, I like to say, to discover new Star Wars books, and it's not new, but it'll be new to somebody. So thank you so much for being here.
Happy to be here, and thanks for doing the thing on it, because, as I say, I always know that these dates are coming up, but sometimes they slide entirely past me. But no, that was a really special year when that came out. I mean, my mother got to go to a library. My mother was a librarian, and she got to go to a local library and hear me talk to all the kids with the costume people around and everything about the book before it comes out, before it came out, and then she actually read the whole book, which I am astonished by. It's not really her thing. But I dedicated it to my sister, who she's had some harder times the last year or so, but she was really my connection to the pop culture of the 70s, because she was older and made sure that I got to see the movie, and that's what I said in the dedication. But she also made sure that I got the toys and the record and everything else, and got to go see Empire Strikes Back, and got to go see Return of the Jedi. I think she drove the car. So yeah, I mean, so it is something that sort of knits together the various parts of my life, and yeah, I think to the extent that that this book is spoken to some folks, yeah, I'm happy for that.
Me too. Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Devor Mondum and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. Keep up with the show on our Substack, starwarslitpod.substack.com, and find the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, as always, for listening. Season 2 is closer than you think. For more book reviews and Star Wars book celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram.